everyone. I'm here with just kind of like a little witch's bookshelf, talking to you about what I've been reading lately, what's kind of on my bookshelf, just giving you a little update in that area. So the first book I'm going to talk about is one I talked about if you watched my last video, which was just talking like update about what's going on with me and some of the issues I'm having around things like anxiety and depression and struggling with like stress and stuff. So I started going to see my therapist again. She's really great. And we're doing what's called cognitive behavioral therapy. So this is CBT is very like it's very common practice for like psychotherapy and things like that, because it is all about using your thoughts to kind of like help to change your mood, to sort of deal with some of these things like anxiety and fears, depression, all those kind of things. So what we have here is it's a classic from the 90s. It is Mind Over Mood: Change How You Feel by Changing the Way You Think, by Dennis Greenberg and Christine Podesky, both PhDs. This has been around forever. It is a classic in psychological circles, and it's basically just like a big workbook about changing, like examining your thoughts about things and noticing like, are you thinking in a way that is catastrophizing? Are you, are you thinking everything is bad? Like testing your thoughts, like, is this true? It also gets you to do things like track like activities, like do you feel a little bit better after you do this, or do you feel worse, like that kind of thing. So it's just like, it's very self-reflective. So if you are, having issues with either of those things, I do recommend this book. I think it's a classic for a reason, and I've found it very helpful. I've worked with it in the past, like years ago. I got this because I was kind of struggling with anxiety. Like my anxiety, I've always had it, but sometimes it's just way worse than others. And it was really bad. Like it was affecting kind of like my day to day. So I was recommended this book, and it helped me a lot. So I'm working with this book again, and I do highly recommend it. The next book, I've also had this book for a while, and I bought it because this was like a few years ago actually. I saw it in a store and it just seemed really different, but at the time I was reading it and it just seemed like really complicated. So I put it away, and then I was looking at this thing called human design, which is kind of a modern, it's invented I think in the 2000s, and it's basically combining things like astrology and the I Ching, and I wanted to kind of know more about it because I'm like, what is this thing people are talking about? So I was looking at books on Amazon, and one of the books that it recommended was this one. I was like, I already have this book. So I went and got it, and it's called Gene Keys, Unlocking the Hidden Purpose in Your DNA, by, where's the author here? It's funny it doesn't have the name of Richard Rudd, right on the cover there. Haha, I didn't see it in the corner. You know what? This book is not the easiest read. I will be very honest about that. What I had to do was look up Gene Keys online, and there is like a free, it's like kind of like your birth chart. There's like a free site where you can put in your data, and it'll give you this set of Gene Keys. And what it is there's like 64 Gene Keys, just like there's 64 hexagrams in the I Ching. And certain Gene Keys apply more to you than others. So what this birth chart kind of does is it shows you which Gene Keys are the ones that are important to you. And so you find like the Gene Keys, I'm trying to remember how many Gene Keys there were. I think there's like 12 or something. Anyway, and then you look up those keys, and those keys can tell you things like lessons you have to learn, kind of what kind of holds the key to like your health or to your career or to understanding people better. So that's I'm giving you a very general gist here. And then you look up the key in this book, and it talks about like the shadow side of that key, kind of the lower vibe, the higher vibe, and then there's like a very high vibe, and sort of like what lessons you're working on. So it's kind of interesting. I wouldn't say this is the easiest read. What I had to do was read it and kind of distill it a bit, because he talks in this very love and light, fluffy, sort of weird language that you kind of have to like read it and then translate it into like normal words. But I still think it's kind of interesting. I don't know, does anybody else into human design or know more about it? I admit I know very little about it. So I was curious about it. So I fetched out this book, and it's, it's kind of an interesting idea. The keys that it gave me, I did find to be relevant to me. So there does seem to be something to it. But I don't know if anybody else knows anything about it. But that's what I've been working with there. Another book I've been reading is one, again, that I had before. Maybe that's like part of the Mercury retrograde. Books I've had for a while that I'm reading now. It's called Midlife is Not a Crisis. This is not actually about midlife crisis. This is an astrology book, believe it or not. It's using astrology to thrive in the second half of life. Now, I did start reading this book a few years ago, and then I lent it to a friend. And it's, I think they're still reading it or whatever, and that's fine. If you're the friend that did that, it's okay. It's totally okay. I have tons of books, and so people borrow books from me, and sometimes I don't get them back. It's just, how it is when you have a lot of books and you lend them out. So anyway, I wanted to read this, and I ended up getting another copy. And what this is talking about some of the astrological cycles that we all experience at certain points in our lives. So it starts with, not in midlife, but it starts with the Saturn return, which we all experience around the age of like 28, 29, 30. And then it goes into things like Saturn squares, and when you're around 42, you have the Uranus opposition, which is when Uranus is opposite where it was when you were born, and that often triggers like a bit of a midlife crisis. It talks about like Jupiter returns. It talks about cycles like your Chiron return in your 50s. Various like astrological cycles that happen to everyone at certain ages of their life and what they mean and how to work with them. So a very interesting book, being almost 50 at this point, it's good to know what's ahead of me. Actually, I should say I'm 47. So it's not like 50 is totally around the corner, but it is around the corner. Let's face it. I found this book really, really interesting. And I think when she wrote this, she was in her late 70s. So she has some perspective in that she's been through most of these. So very interesting book for astrology. The next book I bought was kind of an impulse buy. I was buying some other books. You know how you see a book and then you're like, oh, that looks interesting. And then you click and you get it. I have here Find Your Unicorn Space by Eve Rodsky, Reclaim Your Creative Life in a Too Busy World. So this book I think is aimed more at like moms, especially new moms. But it is about finding time for your creativity, because she says a lot of times women get especially women, but I think men too, to a certain degree, get caught up in the role of like what she calls 3 Ps, which are like parent, partner, profession, right? Like work and kids and partnership. And then we end up losing time for things like self-care and adult friendships, but even more so, just times to do things just for fun. And a lot of women complain that they've lost themselves, that they don't have fun anymore. And it says you have to prioritize that time, because if you don't, you're going to be miserable, is basically the gist of the book. And how to like make sure that you get that time, what to do with that time, making sure your partner understands it's super important to you. I don't personally have an issue so much with this, because I'm like a step parent where the kids are here half time. So I do get time away from the kids. I also have a partner who understands that I need my creative time, or I'm not going to be happy. He knows that. And I think we both make room for each other. So I think if you're already in a good partnership where you know that with each other, that's good. But I think it's just a really good read about the importance of creative time and space. Everybody needs that, and how important that is, and that we should be prioritizing that instead of putting it as last on the list. So I think it's an interesting book. I'm 2/3, 3/4 of the way through, and I'm enjoying it. I'll do a full review later, but basically that's the general gist of the book. And then the next book I just got, and I haven't started reading it yet. And this one, I'm trying to remember who talked about this on their channel. I feel like it was Candy from Candy Soul and Soil. If not, forgive me, but I'm pretty sure it was her. And I don't, there's so many books titled this. I'm not even sure if it's the same book that she was talking about, but it's called Slow, and it's Simple Living for a Frantic World. And I definitely have been so stressed out. the idea of living slower, I'm like, yes, yes, please. So it's a very beautiful book. This is the hardcover. I think there's a softcover version too, but it's very beautiful. And it has really lovely photos in it. Has like, again, we've got our oranges and things. There must be a thing here with oranges. Um, it's well designed. There's like beautiful pictures of trees and things in here, but it is about slowing down, and it's things like decluttering, which I desperately need to do. Very pretty. Things like decluttering, things like, having less, which I'm not a minimalist. I'm not a minimalist, but I do agree that sometimes too much can be overwhelming. I'm definitely not going to be a minimalist anytime soon, that's for sure. And it talks about mindfulness, like being present, putting things back in priority, what really matters. It talks about disconnecting to reconnect. Like it's talking about, how we can get overwhelmed with social media, and, putting it in its place, basically. Like, I don't think looking through this book, it argues that, oh, never use social media ever, but it's just sort of like putting it in its place, and setting limits on time. Just going to show you more of the beautiful photos in here. So it's a really pretty book to look at. I'm going to read it and say, what I think of it and stuff. And it talks about like things like thrifting and recycling and stuff like that. So I think that, it might be an interesting read. Again, I'm not even sure if this is the same book because there are a few books titled this. I think this is the same one, but I'm not totally sure. But anyway, that is what's on my reading list. So there's astrology because there's always astrology in there, but the rest are very like mental healthy type books, I guess. But that's kind of what's on my reading list. Let me know if you have read any of these, what your thoughts are, what you think of them. Yeah, let me know. And I will, when I'm done with them, I'll let you know a little more about what I think of them when I'm totally done with them. So thank you again so much for watching. And thank you everybody for your kind messages. And as always, peace and love. Oh, I'm doing it wrong. Peace and love and rock and roll.